Okay, Rick, you can start recording now. All right, so now we're starting our presentation here. Thank you all for coming. It's good to see so many people. Oh my gosh, I have more people in the waiting room. Let me let them in. Thank you all for joining. So we're just going to start in. So you're at the nursery. So you're already there. You know, what do you do? How do you shop for plants? So we keep having more people in that waiting room. Come on in, everybody. Okay. All right, I'm Lily Browning. I work for Hernando County Utilities here in Hernando County in water conservation. And my program that I utilize to teach water conservation is Florida Friendly Landscaping. And here are the 9 principles of Florida Friendly Landscaping. We'll probably cover quite a few of them today, but be heavy on right plant, right place. I think we're going to cover quite a bit of them. And my email is right down here because this question may come up. I will have it later in the presentation as well. But if you would like a PDF copy of this presentation, the best thing to do is to email me, because that is where that is the best way to catch me in these days of COVID, is to email me. So right down below, it's Lillyb, Lillyb at hernandocounty.us. And we should be able to, I'll send you a PDF. Also, this is being recorded. Rick Fody is recording it for Hernando County Government Broadcasting, as well as I am recording it right now. So probably after 2 o'clock this afternoon, the recording will be available on my Facebook page as well. All right. So when we're talking about going to the nursery, we do need to talk about before we get there. So before we go, there's some things you need to do. And I do cover this quite a bit in a lot of my classes because it's important, but you need to check your available space. There are lots of memes going out there that saying a real gardener just buys, a million plants having no idea where they're going to put them. But in reality, if we want to be efficient with our funds, we're going to want to make a plan. So check what available space that you have, your soil and light conditions, and sketch it out so you keep it in your mind. What it is that that just helps us realize what we have. It doesn't have to be beautiful like a perfect landscape design plan. Mine certainly would not be, but as long as you can understand it, that's what's important. Okay, decide how much maintenance work you're going to do. I'm going to show you a picture of a project I have going on right now. And normally I say I don't like a lot of maintenance, but for this project, there's going to be quite a bit of maintenance because I am trying to get rid of mainly grassy weeds to create this wildlife bed that I'm making. And I'm not using any chemicals to do it, but I know once I get all the weeds and everything covered and just the plants there, that's not going to be the end of it. There's going to be a lot of weeding that will continue to need to be done. So decide how willing you are to do that. Research the plants to get exactly what you want. So I'm sorry, I keep pausing. I'm letting more and more people into the class here. Find out what it is you want first. So always we say plan before you buy. And this is just one of my new sayings I came up with in the past couple of weeks. But failure to plan is planting to fail. A lot of times we just hear that, failure to plan is planning to fail. But in the plant world, failure to plan is planting to fail. So let's have a plan before we start. Here's my very unbeautiful project in it's in process. That's why it's not very beautiful right now. And I did, you know, make a plan that I wanted this whole area here of my backyard to have native plants that is going to attract wildlife and pollinators. It's only in the beginning stages, so I'm only, you know, exposing this as not beautiful so you don't feel bad when yours isn't incredibly beautiful as well. I'm using, you know, cardboard and that little AstroTurf rug to try and smother out some weeds. I have to buy a lot more mulch. You see where my mulching stopped up near the top there. But the idea that I have going on here, and this gets a good amount of morning sun because it's in the east. The idea is to have this, at least this portion will be entirely native plants. And here's what, and they're small. They're small, that's why you can't see them quite yet in this photograph. But as they get bigger, they're gonna fill in this space quite nicely. I have firebush, narrow-leafed sunflower, giant ironweed. You can't, the bed itself is a good 10 more feet past what you see in this picture. Blue porterweed, maypop, or purple passion vine. I was listening to Rita Grant, where I got all these plants from. She's a native plant expert, even though she says she's not an expert. Yesterday saying, you know, she wouldn't, she's done it before, but she wouldn't again put passion vine on a fence because it'll freeze up here in Hernando County and it's a pain to tear it down. But I've had it on a fence before and I don't mind tearing it down and letting it start all over again. I think it does great on a fence. So that's all up to, you know, personal choice. We just have more and more people keep coming on in here. White wild indigo, very small, but it's gonna start growing up. Rosin weeds, you gave me a little tiny rosin weeds. I have tried to transplant some beach sunflower from other places in my yard. And if you've heard me talk about beach sunflower, it's very finicky. It does what it wants to do. So we'll see if that works. I wrote out Asclepias tuberosa because that is milkweed, but I wanted to point out I have the native milkweed in there. Some Spanish needle, which I literally just threw on the ground and is growing, and I might be sorry about that. We talk about that often. It's a weed, it's definitely a weed, but it attracts so many pollinators all of the time that I just, you know, have to have it around, even though it is difficult to keep under control. And the one other plant you can see in this photo is, of course, the nosy canine in the photo as well. So when you're at the store, one of the first things you got to ask yourself is, will it grow here? And I know you may be thinking, why is it at my nursery if it's not going to grow here? Well, if it's a big box store, you know, it's possible that they just have a regional buyer that buys for a Southeast region or things such as that. I've had people ask me, why is this there? Why is that there? Well, I can't really answer that, but I can tell you it's probably not going to grow here. So just remember that our zone is zone 9A. So that's the kind of plants you want to look for. Got many things going on my screen here. There we go. In Hernando County, we are zone 9A. So that's really what you want to look for. We're not tropical. Here in Hernando County, we are not tropical. You may think, you know, that we are, but we are not. So
I will send an email
if everyone could
to
please
Linda Whitney.
Microphones off so we don't have any confusion. Just make sure you have that little red microphone with a slash through it in the corner of your let me see if I can. Okay, yeah, just everyone, if you could make sure your microphones are off, that would be helpful. Now, it is getting a little warmer, so, you can experiment with things that are in zone 9B if you wish. Just remember, you are conducting an experiment and it could freeze, so I wouldn't spend a lot of money with your experimental type of plants. But if you're looking for things that grow in Miami for the Keys, you're very likely to lose them in our winters. So keep that in mind. Also, before you go, a good place, and I mention this all the time, a good resource to find plants is this right here. This plant selection guide, Florida friendly plant selection guide. So, and landscape design guide as well. You can get your hands on one of these in several ways if you live in our area. If you don't live in our area, anyone can get one at that first top link and download it to your computer. You don't have to memorize that. Just put Florida Friendly Plant Selection Guide in Google, and then you should be able to download it to your computer, even your phone. The other ways you can get it is if you do live in the Southwest Florida Water Management District in one of their 16 counties, go to watermatters.org and then go under resources and public, and you should be able there, I think it's on page 2, they've got a lot of great resources, to order one. You'll fill out a form, but it's free and they will mail it to you. You do have to live within one of their 16 counties to qualify for that. Now, if you live in the St. John's Water District or some of the others, you might want to get a hold of them to see if they offer it as well. If you are local, you can call our county extension office, 352-754-4433. Teresa will be glad to get you one. If you're not really into going out and about yet, they will take it out to your car for you. Also, the Hernando County Master Gardeners at their nursery have these available for free. So if you're in the area and you want to go there, they're open Wednesdays, 9 to 11. You're with me, so you can't do it today. Also on Saturdays from 9 to 11. So those are the ways locally you can get a hold of one of these free books, and they're a really great place to start. And it's not all about just the big box stores. We're kind of programmed to go there because it's easy, because we can go there and get our plants and then go inside and get the hammer van and all, and there's nothing wrong with that. But keep in mind there are lots of other smaller local nurseries probably in your area. I would Google, that's the easiest thing to do, nurseries in our area. We have quite a few here. Ask your friends, neighbors, what they feel about them. But Rita gave a class yesterday on easy to plant wildflowers, and you can watch that. If you go back to my Facebook page, it's on yesterday. I posted it, so you can watch that recording as well. But she mentioned that you don't want to go too far out of your way to look for plants. Like if you're really looking for even native plants, there's a great nursery in Groveland called Green Isle. Well, they're about the same. They're either 9A or 9B over there.
I completed my online ELS course.
Please turn their microphones off.
Period.
Make sure your microphones are off.
I need to complete my hands-on
and please make
portion of the BLS.
Off.
Period.
Okay. If you're
However,
on the phone or otherwise, please make sure your microphones are off.
I just underwent significant thumb surgery.
Okay.
And I'm not certain at this time when I will be able to complete it. Period.
All right.
I do return to the doctor on Friday, October 2nd.
You're all muted. I don't have anybody.
Period.
here.
I will ask him and get a
See,
medical note
you're
if that
all
is what I need,
muted.
period.
Are you able to mute all the other participants?
I can't see where it says to mute all, so
Yeah.
I'm going to look through right now. I think we got it taken care of. Okay. Let me try to move on here. Oh, yes.
When I do come to
The,
complete the hands-on portion,
Hello? You can
what
use her by
items
going
will I
to
need to bring with me?
security.
maybe
There's
Rick, if you can look
you can
through
check
since you're
it.
a
Question
co-host.
mark.
Mute her.
Can you mute everyone, please?
Yes.
That's what I'm trying.
Thank you
to
for
do.
your assistance,
Let me see.
comma.
It's under the security button.
Okay. I'm trying to see where it says mute all, and I don't have that at the moment. So if everyone could just please police their own, and then we can move on. Okay. There's plenty of small local nurseries around here as well, and you can check those out. Two like groups that have nurseries are our Master Gardeners, as I just mentioned, and the Spring Hill Garden Club has a nursery at the Spring Hill Botanical Gardens on Parker Avenue in Spring Hill. Great place to go and walk around anytime during daylight hours. And they also have a nursery. Last I knew, they were open Mondays and Saturdays. I don't know if COVID had to that situation. So, you know, you might want to call and find out. But also be careful when you go to church rummage sales or other things such as that, because there's always going to be, you know, that one very helpful lady who potted up a whole bunch of little plants to help out. And then, you know, and she's not realizing that it might be an invasive exotic plant. So you got to be real careful about those situations as well. And also you got to think about, is this the right time of year that I should be buying this plant that they have available out? It might be beautiful. Remember, it was forced to grow into, let me see, got to get back to the waiting room here. It was forced to grow from a greenhouse. So, you know, is it going to continue to grow at your house? That's what we need to consider. Okay, I'm trying to let some more people in. All right. And, you know, what time of year should it really be planted? And there's a great, if it's annuals, there is a great way to, a great publication you can look up. It's Gardening with Annuals in Florida. That's the link to it, but you can just Google Gardening with Annuals in Florida and make sure you put UF, University of Florida. That has a chart, and if you look at Central Florida or whichever region you're in, and you can see what annuals should be growing here. You know, if you just came from up north, you may think spring is the time for pansies and petunias, when here really winter was the time for our pansies and petunias. And most even big box stores have learned that, and they will put out the appropriate annuals, but you just want to be sure. And also most plants in Florida can be planted at any time, but maybe not all of them. So therefore you want to see that when it should be planted, just make sure. Okay, now we're at the store, and we got to remember it starts with healthy plants. Ah, here, I see the mute all now that I think we've taken care of it, but let me make sure that's done. Okay. When you're at the store and you're holding the plant in your hand, you want to make sure, we're going to turn over a new leaf, and we're going to turn over all the leaves and look under, make sure there's not, you know, an excessive amount of scale, aphids. Also look on the stems, because some of those camouflage themselves on the stems. You want to look for holes in the leaves that aren't supposed to be there, distorted leaves. blisters on, on the plant, sticky leaves that is not supposed to be a sticky plant. And you want to reject any foliage that is wilted or limp. And also look out for yellow, brown, or black leaves, unless the leaves are supposed to be yellow for if it's variegated or something. Don't get those kind of plants. If they're really leggy, that means they've been there for quite a while and they're really reaching up for the sun, and they probably are getting past their prime and not the healthiest plant that you have. Now this last one is the hardest thing for many of us. Avoiding that clearance cart, because we want to go there, don't we? We want to go to that cart with the $2 plants, and we want to take them home and hug them and love them and make them better. And everyone's going to have a story where they've done that and then had the most successful plant. But you really got to consider, we're very conscious now of disease amongst ourselves. We don't want to take home diseased plants or plants that are suffering with an insect problem to our healthy, happy plants at home. So, be real careful with that clearance cart, and I would just probably be best to avoid it. The roots. If the roots are coming out of the holes on the bottom of the pot, that's probably one you want to avoid. It's getting way too root bound. It's been there quite some time. You can pull them up. I mean, don't pull them entirely out like this picture, but pull them up a little. Make sure that they're not circling or girding around. The roots should pretty much be a white color. If you got black or brown roots, that's not a plant that you want to look at there. Now, if they're severely pot bound, you probably want to avoid that. If it won't even come up out of the pot, that's probably one you want to avoid. But if it's kind of just a lot of fibrous plants like this one, if you put that in the ground just like that, you could probably pull it up just like that in 2 years and it won't have changed at all. So what you want to do there, Frank from Pasco County, he suggests that you like shave that whole top layer off and, shave a little bit off of all the way around, or you can butterfly it and pull them out. Just set those roots free, and so that they're going to continue to grow into the ground. The best part would be not to get them pot bound to begin with. Weeds could be an issue too, and I think there are some publications where I've read where say don't take these potted plants with any weeds, and I think that in Florida anyway is a very high expectation, especially your smaller nurseries that may be outside more in a wooded area. They're not on cement or anything like that. It's very, very, very difficult to have 0 weeds in that pot. But if there's a lot of weeds in there, those weeds are going to be competing for nutrients with that plant. So the plant may already be, kind of weakened by that and susceptible to other issues. So, and also if the pot is just full of weeds, you've got to wonder, how else was this plant neglected? So 1 or 2 little sprig weeds, pull them out. There's no need to bring them home to you, or if you do, when you see them at home, pull them out and throw them away. But a lot of weeds in that pot might, it's going to be an indicator of bigger issues as well. And be bargain conscious, just like when you're shopping for anything. Buying flats, of the smaller plants is usually more cost effective than buying that big pretty one. And you're going to have more in the long run. You won't have that instant gratification that we always want. But keep longevity in mind, starting out with the smaller ones and with more of them, it's more cost effective and you'll have a bigger bang for your buck in the long run. Why this lady is smelling marigolds is beyond me, but it is, I mean, if I smell them, I'm just going to smell the soil probably, but the point is to get, you know, buy the smaller flats and you'll have a bigger bang for your buck. Also, buy plants with unopened blooms. There's a whole lot of mums out right now for the fall. And of course, I had to get some too, because I like the burgundy colored ones. But I, you know, got a pot that had only just a few of the flowers already came out, so that when I get it home, you know, and it's already starting to, all those buds are starting to bloom now that I have it home. If you buy it all bloomed out, you know, then they're going to die out once you get it home, you know, quicker. And think about foliage as well. You don't want to just build your landscape around the bloomers. That's a design principle right there too. But it's kind of a fine line. You want to have a landscape that has things blooming at different times, so you always have some interest going on. But you also want to make sure that you have some interesting foliage for the times when the flowers want to rest. So remember, green is a color too. Doesn't have to be all about the flowers. And there's a whole lot of plants out there that will bring you very interesting foliage. You can build a foundation of plants with interesting foliage that has different colors, different textures, just really interesting things going on, to be like a foundation of your landscape, and also to sometimes they can take center stage as well. Okay. Okay, so we're going to discuss here the common problem plants, and by that I mean the invasive exotics. And you may think, why will any store sell me a plant that's an invasive exotic? And I'm going to try and explain what goes on there. So, what is an invasive exotic? What am I talking about when I discuss that? Well, I need to move some things out of my way here, out of my screen. An invasive exotic plant is an introduced species that has been shown to displace native vegetation by outcompeting the native species. And because they don't have the limiting factors that keep them under control where they are from. I always say there's no such thing as a bad plant, but there are. It was us. We're the most invasive species at all. Usually we brought it here and it's caused a problem. So then a noxious weed is actually state and federally regulated, so that it cannot be, it can't be bought or sold or moved around in the state. It's illegal to do that. So there's also an organization out there called the Florida Exotic Pest Plant Council. And that is a watchdog group. They are not a federal organization. They don't make any laws or rules. What they do is they watch these plants. And so a lot of times they make the federal or the state organizations aware, hey, this is really becoming a problem. So on FLEPC's list, there's a whole lot more plants that they're watching. They're saying, we have our eye on you. Then has made it all the way up to becoming a law that you can't have it anymore. So some of the plants you see in the store, wherein they may be on FLEPC, the Florida Exotic Pest Plant Council's list, as a problem plant, because they're not under any government edict that you can't sell them, that's why you're going to see them in the store. So if that explains that. So FLEPC has made two categories. There is category 1, and a lot of those have made it up to the government levels of being banned. Not all of them. And, you know, that they're proven that they alter native plant communities in various ways by outcompeting them, changing community structures, changing the ecologic setup, or hybridizing with natives. Then there's category 2. Those are the ones that Phlepsy feels like could be a problem, is probably going to be a problem, is showing, you know, signs that it's sure going to act like a problem, but it hasn't made it to any of the lists. It's not on even on their category 1 yet. That is probably what you're going to find possibly in the store. So here are a few of them in our region that you could find in the store. Let me shrink some things down so I can even see a little better. Whoops, go back. This Mexican petunia, and I know many, many people are in love with it, and we see it all over the place, and you can see it in the store all the time as well. It's very, very common, and builders have it put in your landscape. Having said that, there's a variety UF came out with called Purple Showers that is supposed to be sterile, so it doesn't produce seeds, but a lot of times these will produce or reproduce by runners too. So I'm still a little leery of them. They don't have much wildlife value. I know a lot of people are in love with them, but there's lots of other purple choices out there that are better choices. This oyster plant as well, or Moses in the cradle, which I don't understand that name. I thought Moses was in a basket, but that's, you know, that's beside the point there. It has, you see this in a lot of plant beds because of the interesting foliage, but it is naturalized in Florida and Louisiana, which means that it's just made itself at home here, but it's looking like it really wants to displace our native plants in the wild areas. And changes occur over time. This you can still find on some of the Florida-friendly materials. And, you know, this photo was taken years ago before we even realized that that oyster plant is a problem. So now this photo is still out there. So we're just showing you that everybody makes mistakes, because in today's world, if you wanted a Florida-friendly certified yard, you can't have any invasive exotics, even the ones on Phlepsy's list. Here's another very common one we're used to seeing in all of our grandma's yards and all those places. Sansevieria, or snake plant, has 2 other names, woman's tongue and mother-in-law tongue. And I take offense to both of those names because I'm both of those things and I don't have a sharp tongue. But anyway, this plant was introduced to Florida around 1800 as a fiber crop and as an ornamental plant. They made various products out of it using the fiber, but all the way back in 1951, they already found out this is a problem plant. It's really just taking over everything. And Sanibel Island is really on top of things, with them being an island down there, that this is one of the plants that they don't even allow you to have in your yard or to bring, you know, to their area. So it gets that out of control there. This one, I'm not, if you wanted it, I'm not suggesting that you have it, but if you wanted it, I would see no reason to buy it because it's everywhere. And it gets confused because the common names, Boston fern, sword fern, could also refer to a non-problem fern. So that's why I put the Latin name here. That is the problem plant, and it's everywhere, all in our woods. The way to tell them apart from some of our native ferns is if you pull them up, and it's usually pretty easy to pull them up, and you find those orange balls on there, that's how you know you have the invasive exotic. And no, I don't know how to eliminate them other than by years and years and years of pulling them up and mowing them down as well. But certainly don't purposefully bring them into your yard. This is another favorite of people's, and this is one I hear often that they say, well, mine is contained. I have it, you know, in a container and it doesn't get out of control. Well, you don't stop the birds from eating the fruit on this. And the birds are the main, they are the main producer of this. They eat the berries, they fly away, they replant the berries, you know, somewhere far away from your yard in some undeveloped areas. Also, this is one of those very sticky plants. It's sticky on purpose. You know, if you ever worked with it and then your hands, you're like, what is that? Well, that stickiness gets on animals' fur. And if it's a roaming type animal, you know, squirrel, fox, anything like that, they could be spreading it around. And once it gets in a undeveloped kind of wild area, then that it can disrupt the native plants there, and they can start to climb up trees and be a pretty big problem. Here's another, you know it by a different name that I'm going to avoid saying, but inch plant is one of the names of it as well. It's in the spiderwort family. It again, they brought it into Florida on purpose around 1800 for a fiber crop and an ornamental plant, but it just goes out of control. It spreads by different ways. Plants that have different ways of propagating themselves usually can be pretty tricky to deal with. So by roots, wind. So if you say you have it under control, you can't control the wind. Or hitchhiking, again, getting on animals or people and moving themselves around. The purple queen variety of this has not been known yet. University of Florida has not declared it a problem plant. I do keep my eye on it. I wouldn't purposefully buy the purple queen version of this. I do have some. Probably the same way you have them. I mean, it's a heritage plant, and you know, it was my mother's, so it's hard for me to get rid of. But the purple one, but I also have researched it, and they said hasn't presented itself as a problem yet, but I would keep an eye on that as well. Here's another favorite, and you're going to tell me, oh, the butterflies. Yes, I know. Some of these invasive plants do attract pollinators and butterflies, but they still are displacing our native plants, and in the long run can be a pretty big ecological problem. If you go east into Brooksville here, you can see these poking out of almost every undeveloped lot in the summer. And they're really getting out of control, and they are toxic to animals. They're the bane of ranchers because they're toxic to cows. So, you know, think about your dog is a lot smaller than a cow. That big word there, allelopathic, what does that mean? That means that they, within themselves, emit a chemical that acts like an herbicide to every other plant that is not a Lantana camara. So, you know, that's not a good thing either. They can produce 12,000 fruits per plant. Not all, there we do have some native Lantana. Lantana depressa is the one you want to look for. There's another trailing Monteverde. Lantana Monteverde is a purple trailing. I've heard differing opinions. Some people say that's okay. Others are like, I don't know, we gotta have our eye on that one too. So the safest thing to do is to stay with the native, Lantana depressa, and I remember that name because, you know, it's depressing that you can't use the other Lantana, but stay with the native. Here's another one that's very common. You can find it in any store, any big box store, and in any landscape around here, this Nandina or this heavenly bamboo. But I've seen it, I had one that was given to me. See, I teach you lessons that I have learned, and I eventually pulled it up, but it's still trying to come up, you know, babies from it. So it is an issue. The berries, I have heard, are poisonous to birds, and that kind of had me wonder about that, because I'm thinking, why would birds eat berries that, you know, are poisonous to them? Part of it is when they eat them in large amounts, and the, oh, I always forget their names, cedar waxwings. The cedar waxwings, they're kind of voracious eaters. So when they descend upon some food, they're going to eat large amounts, and that's where it becomes toxic to them. And this hasn't been around in our country. It's an Asian plant, so it hasn't been around long enough for the birds to develop that innate knowledge to stay away from that. That's some of the other problems we have, you know, with a lot of non-native plants. Okay. And when you go to the store, you want to ask, because a lot of them have been treated with systemic pesticides. So especially if you have butterflies or bees or other pollinators on your mind, you want to be thinking, was this plant treated with a systemic pesticide? I have heard literal horror stories that, you know, from people I know, that milkweed is the big thing, you know, you got to help the monarchs, and that's a good thing. But people, so many monarchs come, and then they get into a panic and they have to buy more milkweed. And they run out to the store, and I know someone who did that, but the milkweed they bought had been treated with a pesticide, which makes zero sense to me. But all her butterflies are dead the next day. And that's just a very, you know, a horror story that we don't want to hear. So especially if your goal is attracting wildlife of any kind, find out what kind of pesticides have been used in that plant. I took this picture recently in a big box store because of that beautiful hibiscus and the beautiful bumblebee there. But I was also kind of feeling a little, you know, tight in my stomach, like, oh, bumblebee, I wonder if this hibiscus has been treated, and, you know, what's going to happen to you now. So I had that fear there. So find out about that before you purchase the plants. Fun with fertilizer. That's a little bit of a sarcastic title there, because I don't know anyone who has fun with fertilizer. But when you're going to the store and you want to buy fertilizer, first you got to ask yourself, well, why? Why are you fertilizing? You shouldn't do it just on a schedule because it's time to do it. There should be a very particular reason that you are fertilizing. Have you done a soil test to find out, you know, what your soil may be lacking for that particular plant? That might be the first step. Also, is it the right time of year? Here, as it's getting closer into fall, we really don't want to be fertilizing. Within another month or so, we don't want to be fertilizing our ornamental plants, because that here in Central Florida, because that's going to encourage new growth, right? And new growth is susceptible to cold damage and bringing that cold damage to the rest of the plant. Here in Hernando County, Florida, we do have a fertilizer ordinance. It's for your lawn. And we're talking about lawns here, this fertilizer ordinance. And homeowners are not allowed to fertilize their lawn between January 1st and March 31st. And there are other rules. You can't fertilize within 10 feet of a body of water. You should never hose down fertilizer. If you have a spill, you should sweep it up, put it back in the lawn, back in the bag, something like that. Oh, and you should not fertilize if you're expecting a big rain event in the next 24 hours. That's our fertilizer ordinance today. I mean, they're talking about making some changes, and the changes will be, you know, it'll be a little more strict than that, but that hasn't happened yet, and we know those talks could take quite a while. But that's the way it is in Hernando County. So, but the question is, can you walk into a big box store or any store January 1st through March 31st and purchase a bag of fertilizer? Yeah. Yes, you can. And that is kind of one of the things they are addressing when they're talking about maybe making some changes, if that would be possible. There's a lot of legal hurdles to get over for that. But just so you know, just because it's out there and available doesn't mean homeowners, you know, are allowed to be spreading it. There's no reason to spread it between January 1st, really, and March 15th. And 2 more weeks won't hurt you. You can wait easily till April 1st to fertilize your lawn. The other thing about fertilizer, and this is one of the hard things, you're going to walk in the store and those weed and feed products are going to be right there, aren't they? Well, at least in Florida, Florida Friendly Landscaping does not recommend the use of weed and feed products. And why is that? These products can injure some trees and shrubs. There's been non-target kills before, because those roots can extend beyond the canopy of the drip line and intermingle with your turf where you're trying to put that. And really, pesticides and herbicides should only be applied to affected areas. We promote spot treating problem areas, not broadcast treating the entire yard. Also, timing is really difficult with our ordinance, and just in general. You should be trying to get those weeds when spring is in Central Florida, and you know, figure out what day that is. Let's guess it's mid-February, somewhere in there. You want to get those weeds with a pre-emergent, and that is before you can or should fertilize. So it just doesn't work out here in Central Florida. And I've highlighted here, don't apply lime. Sometimes we come from different states up north where every, you know, part of your routine was every spring you got to sweeten the soil. Well, our pH is already mid to high. There's not very much low pH, especially here in Hernando County. Our main industry is phosphate mines, the lime rock mines. We have plenty in the soil. And I always tell everyone, if you get a soil test done for your lawn and it tells you to apply some lime, bring it to me and I'll eat a bug, because I have not seen that happen in the 20-some years that I've worked for the county. So don't just automatically go and apply lime. And yeah, it can be in the store too. And I have overheard someone in a big box store, I wasn't in their aisle, but I overheard the guy say, oh yeah, that fertilizer's fine. And you know, yeah, you can always apply some lime. And I was like, oh, no, that's exactly what you don't want to do here. An interesting kind of new thing that has occurred is the use of compost. We've been using it in our beds, in our landscape beds, for quite some time, but now they are finding out if there's a particular commercial compost. Different places offer it, but they find if they put it down before they put down turf here in Florida, that they have a stronger, longer lasting turf. And also, if you're beyond that point, top dressing it once a year with a compost also helps with its disease resistance and just keeping it stronger. So that's something to think about as well. Mulch, when you're at the store and it's time to buy mulch, there is a list of the organic, something that was once alive mulch, you know, that is fine to buy. People ask me occasionally about that dyed mulch. In the research I've done with the University of Florida, just make sure it's a non-toxic dye, like a soy-based dye or something like that, and it shouldn't be a problem. If you want to have those weird unnatural colors in your yard, it shouldn't be, you know, much of an issue. Hardwood is usually either mixed different types of woods, or sometimes it's even ground up pallets. So as long as you know those pallets were never pressure treated. That should be fine too. Well, the recycled material at home, if you have pine straw, even leaves, I mean, that's what happens in the forest, and that's where we got the idea of mulch from what nature does. So that'll work fine too. And just remember, you're only going to apply 2 to 3 inches. So don't go overboard buying the mulch when you're only going to apply that 2 to 3 inches. The mulch we want you to avoid is written there: the cypress mulch, rocks, and rubber mulch. Rubber mulch and rocks had never been alive. Okay, no, millions of years ago, the rubber mulch was alive. It was a dinosaur, but they're too hot here in Central Florida, and they're not adding anything good back to the soil. I love rocks, but I use them kind of decoratively, not as a whole. I use them maybe as a border or just decoratively within the beds, not as a whole, not as a whole mulch. What do I have against cypress mulch? Well, it's not me personally. The Florida Friendly Landscaping doesn't recommend the use of cypress mulch because it's just an unethical practice right now. It's not sustainable. What is happening is they are going into our wetlands and taking down young cypress trees, because that's all that's left. We don't have any grand old cypress trees anymore with that old bark. And they're shredding them down instantly to be bagged up as mulch to us. And that's just not a sustainable practice that we want to encourage. So just like it's right there at the door with the weed and feed, and it's the cheapest mulch there, we just encourage you to use one of these others. Now here's where people, they have patches in their lawns and they want them to green up, and they get tempted to purchase what would seem like an easy fix. Well, let me just spread this seed around here. Well, the first thing you need to ask is, what kind of seed is it? There's not that many kind of lawns that grow here in Central Florida. And also, if you're mixing, if it's a Bermuda grass seed or something, and you're mixing it with your St. Augustine, you're going to have issues trying to maintain that patchwork lawn. And where is it from? And bluegrass and fescues are not going to grow here. And I've had a relative ask me, she said, will bluegrass grow here in Hernando County? And I just answered her no. And she said, why does enter blank here store sell it? And I was like, well, one would ask that store why they sell it. And the answer is still the same. No, it's not going to grow here. So, and as I said, mixing all kind of different turf together, it would be a maintenance nightmare. I mix turf and weeds, and don't worry about maintenance. Ryegrass is fine here, but it's going to last you one winter. It is not going to be a full-time lawn. If you want to have pretty green lawn for the winter, it's fine to use, but it's going to be dying out by May. There is no such thing as St. Augustine seed. It's a vegetatively produced type lawn, so you're going to have to buy either plugs or sod. If you're looking to ramp up your Bahia grass, I wouldn't start a Bahia grass lawn 100% from seed, because you're going to get a billion more weeds before those seeds ever come up. But you can use it for some empty spots, and it's actually recommended like every 3 or 4 years to just overseed your Bahia with some seed to kind of mimic what would happen in nature, because we mow it down before it goes to seed. So you want to find the Argentine Bahia. The Pensacola Bahia is usually for pastures or roadsides. The Argentine Bahia is a little bit better for lawns. And also make sure it's scarified, because Bahia grass seed is tough, 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 tough. What does scarified mean? You see the word scar there? It's been put through a tumbler, and it is roughed up so that it will eventually crack and let the grass come out. And avoid, you see on TV, oh, just put this down, and with those bare patches. There are no easy fixes for lawns. And like I said, using whatever kind of seed there is to fix bare patches could end up being, it may look completely different and be very difficult to maintain. Trees, when you're buying a tree, smaller trees, again, are much cheaper. They establish quicker and you can control them a little more, and they require less irrigation to establish. You want to look for those healthy roots that radiate straight out from the trunk. Good structure, unless it's a tree like what are mentioned here that is supposed to have multiple branches, but like an oak tree or something like that, you want a strong central trunk, a strong central leader. If there's two trunks there, as that gets older, those trunks are going to compete, and that is going to be a place where breakage is going to occur. You want to avoid roots that are black or brown and that smell bad. Again, those circling roots. Kinked roots, that means they're turning back on themselves. And the root-bound trees in the pot, that poor structure, as I just mentioned, you want that strong central leader. But if there's any trunk wound at all, if it's small on a small tree, it's going to get big when the tree gets bigger. Oh, here's just what I want to mention here in Central Florida, Florida-friendly landscaping with a TM, a dash between the Florida and the friendly and the TM. Why is that important? Because we don't sell you anything. We're just an educational department of the University of Florida. So we don't sell you anything. So if you see something in a store that says Florida friendly, but maybe is missing the dash or has small F's or something like that, don't think it's from us, and don't necessarily believe immediately that it is indeed a Florida friendly plant. Yeah, do your research on that. Kind of tricky, I know, makes you mad, but that's what happens. And when you're at the store, just remember, who's the boss? Who's paying for that product? Now, I'm not telling you to be mean or ugly, and especially, to the workers there who have not much control of what's going on at all. So probably the most efficient thing to do if you want to see changes is to email the corporate offices and ask for those changes you want to see, and email them like on a schedule every few months so that they keep hearing that you want to see more natives. Some of these stores, I've gone on the most depressing scavenger hunt you can imagine trying to find a native plant in some of those stores. You want less use of pesticides, and you wish they would not sell those invasive exotics and list them. And that would be, one good way to make yourself known there. And if they hear from enough people, maybe changes will be made. Now, when you get home, you could have bought the best plant ever, and if you plant it wrong, it could still die. Now, a lot of the stores, you can take it back, and they have that year warranty, and they'll just take it back and replace it, but that's only because they want you to keep coming back to their store. It doesn't mean they did anything wrong. It could be how you planted it. So put it in the right place. And my friend in Pasco County, Jim Mull, he kind of changes the right plant, right place, or he adds to it. It's right plant, right place, right care, because that's important too. Now remember, when you bought those plants, they're used to being in that nursery and getting watered every day. I'm not telling you to keep that up forever. I'm telling you to kind of wean them off the water. Plus they have to be established, so they're going to need water while they're being established. But even if you haven't planted them yet and you still have them in the pots, remember they're used to that water every day, so they're going to react if you don't give them, if it hasn't rained on them or you don't give them some water. So maybe kind of wean them off from having so much water. And here's our mantra. This is also from Jim Mull: plant them high and they won't die. Plant them low and they won't grow. I talk about that in a lot of my classes. You're going to feel a little uncomfortable. It's a little too high, but that soil ball should be maybe an inch above the soil. Then kind of create a moat around it with the dirt you dug out. You want to dig the hole 2.5 times wider, but no deeper than that soil ball. And mulch, you probably bought the mulch at the same time you bought the plants, and the mulch in the bag is pretty dry too. So I like to leave the plants in the ground a good week, get them a good soaking before I put the mulch around them, but I'm not gonna put that mulch still on the soil from that soil ball.
Yeah, this thing's burning up.
Here are some resources. Again, here's my email, Lillyb, it's 2 L's in the middle, Lillyb at hernandocounty.us. You can email me if you'd like a PDF of this or have any particular questions. Here are some other resources. Florida Friendly Landscaping has a lot of great things going on there at 40yards.org. This Florida Association of Native Nurseries, that's where you can open it up and find where are the native nurseries in my area. And give them a call, find out when their hours are if you have to make an appointment. But as Rita said, you don't, well, I would just try to stay ones that are, you know, in the 9 zone. Because if you drive all the way to South Florida and you've made a day of it, of course you're going to buy a lot because you went all that way. And maybe you're going to buy a lot of tropical plants, and that's not going to do you any good in the long run. So try to stay here in Central Florida if that's where you are, or if you're in South Florida, try to stay in that region. North Florida, try to stay in that region. Here's another one I haven't really shown you before, but this would be a great resource, especially if you're in the business, but even if you're not. The FNGLA, that's Florida Nursery Growers and Landscapers Association. Find out who are members, what nurseries are members there. It's a great organization for people in the business, and they do teach them a lot. So if you have, you know, your nursery people who are being trained or certified by FNGLA, you can feel pretty safe with them. You can always call the county extension office or email Dr. Lester or Teresa to find out answers, and the master gardeners here at the nursery as well. Okay, that is what I have for you today. Now let me see the chat. Goodness, 51 chats. I don't know if we will get through all of that, but let's see which ones we can grab. Okay. Yes, Kathy, it is being taped. So if this afternoon, if you go back to Hernando FFL Programs Facebook page, I'll have it on there. I usually pin the most recent one on the top. Beach sunflowers in Hernando or Citrus County. I got mine from the Hernando County Master Gardeners, but that was years ago. You can give them a call, give Teresa a call and find out if they have them there. I think they may. Let me see. Good for pollinators in the fall and the winter. I've had some pollinating classes, but I will, Cynthia, I'll try to, that'll be another class. Let's see. Basically telling me how to mute someone. I'm going FFL, but not always native. How can you tell the plants are safe for pollinators? Now, as far as I know, there's not, well, I'm sure there are some rules about pesticides. I would just make sure that, you know, and ask questions. Have they been treated at all? Because if they've been treated at all, they're not safe for pollinators. And a waiting period, I'm not sure about that. I've asked Dr. Lester before. You know, those treated with systemic, he says sometimes you can cut them down to the ground pretty much and let them come back, especially the milkweeds, and it should be out of their system by then. I think it's easier just to buy them without the pesticides to begin with. Yes, patronizing smaller nurseries as opposed to big box stores usually enables conversations with staff. Yes. who know and recommend plants, and sometimes staff is just the owner of the small nursery as well. Susan, if you look up that floridayards.org, you can find out about a Florida-friendly certified yard, and then call your extension office to see if that's happening in your area. For blanket flowers, I just planted, transplanted some, and I asked Rita yesterday when a good time to plant any wildflowers are, and she basically said anytime. They're not going to look great right now, but you know, anytime you can plant them. Let's see. I'm not sure how you can determine if plants were treated by pesticides other than by asking. And a lot of the big box stores will do that. I'm not sure what the Master Gardeners nurseries have. They have transplants of various things. They have a lot of natives, but they're not an exclusive native nursery. They do not treat with any pesticides. That's the good thing about them. Okay, I think we're running out of time here. So what I'll try to do is to, you can always email me if you really want your question answered here. And I will get back to you on that. And I would like to thank everyone very much for joining us. Thank you, Rick, for joining us today. I think he's going to be with us from now on, so that this will be on channel 644 live, as well as streamed from Hernando County's website live. All right, let me turn off the recording.
Problems with this.
Okay.